I have a lot of really cool friends who do a lot of really cool things. I wanted to make it a goal to sit down with these friends and spend about 15 minutes or so getting to know them better and find out about their past, present, and their future. The result is this show. My name is Grant Baciocco, and this is 15 Minutes With. Kate Danley is an actress, a writer, a full-time writer, which is absolutely amazing, a playwright and an improviser, and a sometimes puppeteer. Kate, thank you so much for coming to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me here, Grant.
I am so excited to talk to you because there's so much, you do so much, and you're really, to me, an inspiration, and we'll get to why in a moment because of the writing. But I would like to know, where did you start out? Where did you begin?
You know, I started off as an actress. I was supposed to get into a French class in middle school, and they didn't have room, and so they stuck me in the theater class, and that was it. It was like the first time I stepped onto stage. It was just like coming home. So I've been acting now for about 25 years. I'm a lifer. I tried to get out, but I can't. So I started off there. I ended up going to a performing arts high school, went to Towson University in Baltimore, moved up to New York from there, back down to Washington, D.C., did a lot of work there, out to to Los Angeles for about 12 years, did some training in London. I'm up in the Pacific Northwest sort of right now, and just all over the place.
And where did you grow up? Was it on the East Coast?
I was a military brat, so started off in California, lived in Chicago, San Antonio, San Francisco, and then spent a lot of time in the Washington, D.C. area. My dad's in the military, and he worked there at the Pentagon. I guess he's the father of the modern vaccine program. I don't know.
Wow.
Fun facts of Kate Danley.
And was anybody else in your family when you were growing up like into entertainment or any sort of creative pursuits?
You know, my extended family is so hugely musical. They are concert pianists, jazz trumpeters that are world-renowned, and I can barely carry a tune. I am the worst musician you will ever... Like, my mom invested so many years in piano lessons, and I'm awful at it. My dad, though, wanted to become an actor, and his mother said that he needed to go to medical school instead, so that's what he did. So my parents have been very invested in me. My mom is brilliant writer, though. She studied Shakespeare and was the Shakespearean scholar that I always hugely admired, and so kind of got the writing from her, got the performance from my dad, and it all just kind of squished together to make up me.
Yeah. That's how it works. Did you write as when you were younger? Like, did you write because you saw your mom writing, or did you go into writing later on?
I actually did start when I was young. I had a 45-minute bus ride to my elementary school, and there was this guy who used to sit next to me on the bus. His name was Austin Adamson, and we were best friends. And so on this 45-minute trip, we would sit there making up stories, and we would write them down, and we would bring them into class and read them. And when I moved away at our next military move, that's how I made friends, was we would have sort of these writing groups. And so I started a novel when I was probably about 13 years old.
Wow.
And I wrote on it for about 19 years. And it is terrible. It will never see every now and again I'll pull it out just to see if it's really as bad as I remember it, and it is terrible. So I've always written, though. I wrote my first play in college. I actually got kicked out because of it.
Wow.
Not from Towson, from a different school. It was a weird college, and they would they didn't believe comedy should exist. They didn't believe that it was of value as an art form. And whenever they would do plays, like, they would just add rape scenes, and it was just crazy. And so I was sitting there in my sophomore year going, God, what would piss these people off? And I thought, Oklahoma. But you can't get the rights to Oklahoma. So I took the works of Dr. Seuss, and I used it as a satire, and I plugged the words of Dr. Seuss into different theatrical styles, and pushed them all together to criticize what I saw was happening there at the school. And at the end of the performance, which sold out every single night, and I just state, I was invited to leave the school. And then I transferred to Towson, where I had a wonderful time and met some of the dearest people I've ever met.
That's fun. We would like to invite you to leave. You've been kind of doing the acting and writing together at the same time this whole from a very young age.
Yeah, I wish that my story was that someone came along and said, you know what, you're the chosen one, and picked me out of the group to turn me into a star. But I found that my career very much has been based upon me just going out and doing stuff, and that I'm kind of I'm a tall, sort of odd-looking, white chick who, is kind of hard to cast, and so I found that if I go off and make my own projects, if I go off and make my own opportunities, that things, that's how things happen. That then people are able to look at me and say, oh, there is something special about you. Oh, I see it now. I know what's going on. But if I go into an audition, or if I go into the normal situations, I am not among the chosen. I have to prove myself first, and then people get on board.
Yeah. Well, let's talk, because I want to talk about, you're a full-time writer, and I want to talk about what were you doing before you decided to say, okay, I'm going to be a full-time writer?
Okay.
Like, did you have a regular day job?
I did. I was a career secretary. That's how I paid my rent. Started off temping in New York and just kind of continued that. And I was working just as a secretary in Los Angeles. And I was going, gosh, this day job really gets in the way of me going out and auditioning. So what I need is a job that will pay me more and involve less hours. So I signed up to become an X-ray tech, which, if anyone is looking for an excellent career, it's a 2-year associate's degree, starting salary in 2004 was $60,000 a year, and so it's a great career. But I was taking this anatomy class, and the teacher was just crazy. He was sitting there telling us things like HIV didn't exist and that it was a government conspiracy, and just stuff where you're like, I have to take this course in order to continue on, but I can't allow this man's ideas to get into my head. So I was like, well, I have to sit here. If I could be reading any book, what would I be reading? And that's when I began writing my book, The Woodcutter. And so I wrote that book instead of taking notes. And shockingly, my career as an X-ray tech never took off, but the writing thing did. I sent that book out for about 5 years to publishers and agents, and no one was interested. I had someone edit it and walk it into some of they're called the Big Six. It's like Penguin and St. Martin's Press, and never got past the slush pile. But kind of again with the theme of my life, I self-published it, and that changed my world.
Why don't you, for folks who are maybe not familiar with the Woodcutter, say synopsis what the Woodcutter is? Oh,
sure. The Woodcutter is a mashup of the fairy tales of the Grimm's brothers and different folklore, and it's a murder mystery basically, with all of your favorite characters, Snow White, Rapunzel, and this woodcutter. The concept was that in all of Grimm's fairy tales, there's usually like a huntsman or a woodcutter, and I thought, well, what if he's the same guy and he's just going from story to story to story, and that's how it all happened.
Yeah, and so you decided to self-publish that?
I did. I was sitting at my day job, and I opened up a piece of what looked like spam from Nook Press, and they said, if you've got a manuscript, you can just upload it, and you can be a published author. And my script, or my book, had been sitting in a slush pile for about 9 months at that point, and I thought, well, maybe they're never going to get back to me, and they still haven't gotten back to me. Yeah. And so I thought, well, I'll just upload this book, and that's what I did. And then I started learning about KDP, which is Amazon's self-publishing arm, and Create Space, which is print on demand. So if someone purchases it used to be when you self-published, you'd have to buy like 1,000 copies of your book and sell it out of the back of your car. And now it's, if they buy a book, they print a book and they send it off for you. So that's how it all launched. A piece of spam. Don't
let the spammers know that it works. So, but the Woodcutter was the first. But like I was looking at your website today, you have so many books that you've written that it's just amazing. And now you've made a full-time career out of it.
Yeah. I released the Woodcutter and I was selling like 8 books a month, and I was kind of like, well, then what do you do after you're published? And I was introduced to National Novel Writing Month, which has changed a lot of people's lives, and I thought, well, why don't I write something for that? And at the time, urban fantasy was kind of coming about, and I wished that there was something that was more humorous in urban fantasy. It was also a time when, vampires were getting to be sexy, and like vampires were my monster. Like the vampires were the creatures that lived in my closet and scared me. And so I wanted my vampires to be scary. So I wrote Maggie for Hire. And once I finished that, I was like, oh, well, then you have to write another one. And so, I just continued writing. And Maggie ended up getting the attention of some producers, so it's been optioned by some folks who they put together the Tudors and Leverage. Wow. And it's gone on to sell, I think, 300,000 copies globally, and do very well for me. And so and you start to meet people and you start to talk marketing with others, and there's nothing as good to market a book as another book. And so writing in a series is a very wise move if you have any listeners interested in going into publishing.
Yeah. And how many Maggie books have you written so far?
Let's see. I've written 5 Maggie books, a short-ish story, and then I've got 2 more on the way this year. Definitely, hopefully more. So.
And so let's talk about this, being a full-time writer. What is your daily, like, do you sit down and go like, okay, for 3 hours I got to write, or what is your routine?
Yeah, so I have a great big calendar that I put on my wall, and I write down at the beginning of the month what my goals are for the month. So, by this day I need to have the first draft done and second draft done, and then I work backwards on how many words I need to do each day in order to hit that goal. And then once I've done that, I set up a spreadsheet and keep track of all the words that I'm writing each day, and I color code that calendar on my wall. If I reach my goal, I get a gold star, and if I don't get anything. So I can see at a glance whether I'm keeping up with my schedule or not. And then I use another method. I learned it from the Fly Lady. I know other people have other methods, but I set a timer for 15 minutes, and the concept is that you can do anything for 15 minutes. And so you sit down and you write for 15 minutes, and if you're having a great time, you can keep on going. But if you're not, you can stop at 15 minutes and get up guilt-free and go do whatever you need to do. And I just repeat that until I reach my word count by the end of the day. And some days it's really easy, and some days it isn't. But I've found that as long as it's like a muscle, if you're sitting down and you're doing it every day, it becomes easier and easier, and you can write for longer stretches. When I'm first starting, I can only do about 15 minutes a day, but by the end of the week, I can usually do 6 to 8 hours.
And you've also, not only in addition to your novels, but you, as you mentioned before, you wrote plays, and you're still doing that.
I am.
And you even just acted in one of your own plays.
I did. It was a play called Building Madness, and it was done over at the GTC Burbank. It's my first full-length play with a whole 2 acts with an intermission in the middle, and it was a 1930 screwball comedy. I love the genre. I feel like it's something that's disappeared from our culture. Back in the day, before we were allowed to have nudity or cussing in movies, they had to have some other reason to keep people's attention, and so they relied upon wit and wordplay and twists and very strong roles for women, and it's just this gorgeous genre that I love. I love playing with all the tropes, and so I wrote a 1930s screwball comedy paying homage to everything I love so much about that style. And we had this incredible cast of Shakespearean trained actors who could handle the language of the 1930s, and I couldn't be more proud of it. I just love it.
Now, I'm sure this isn't the first time you've acted in something that you've written, but do you ever get like a point where you're like, why did I write that? Like a line where you're like, like, were you like during the show thinking like, oh, this line should be this?
Yes.
Like all of us self-critical artists usually are.
Totally. Well, and I was very fortunate. Kevin Cochran he is the owner of the GTC Theater. He's also a director and a dramaturg. So he kind of kept an ear open for things that were working and that weren't. But yeah, it was especially hard when I was standing backstage and I'd hear them say a line where I'm like, oh gosh, do they think I actually feel that about myself, or that I actually think this about the world? And oh, that's really embarrassing. Like, it's almost like having someone read your diary, but it's not actually a diary of your reflection of the world. It's just like some stuff you wrote down. And so I don't know, it was very, very odd. And yes. Yes. And the short answer is yes.
Well, it's like, I know from my years substitute teaching, but also writing is like, you always tell people, oh, read it out loud so you can hear how it, like, hearing your words out loud, did it completely change, or not completely, but did it help you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what some of the training that really went into this script that was helpful was that I used to write for a weekly sketch show, and so every Sunday we would have to show up with these sketches, and they taught us, never make a line any longer than a line. Like, it should never be 2 lines long, just to keep the pacing up. And so there were some times in the script where I thought, well, I can go 3 lines, 4 lines, give people a chunk of dialogue, and it just slowed things down. And jokes that I thought would work in my head didn't work so well on stage. Things that worked really well in a reading where they had the script in front of them and were standing at music stands didn't work when suddenly the script was out of the hand and they were trying to stage the things that I had described. And so just it's a very alive art form, and I think that in order to be a successful playwright, you really do have to hear your words out loud, and you really do have to hear them or see them staged, because it's night and day. Yeah. And I did a reading originally up in Seattle, and like the entire second act completely changed. Like, originally it was like there was like this cross-dressing cop who was like secretly involved with like taking down the mob, and she turned into like this oil heiress. And then by the time we got to the production we're doing now, this character is a mob mama who's kind of controlling things. It's fun to watch all these things develop. Yeah.
Another thing that when I think of you, I always think of is, you're not a person who, oh, I've been to London. You've been to London several times, and you may be going again. What's the fascination? I mean, obviously it's a great place, but like, why does that place strike a chord with you?
Oh gosh, when I went there was this spirit of kindness which we don't have here in America. Like, I went to go see this play, and one of my favorite actresses in the whole wide world was in this play, and it was sold out. And so they have lines where you can get return tickets. And so I'm sitting in line, and there are these 2 Indian women who are sitting in front of me, and we get to talking, and they are university professors. And so suddenly I'm having this conversation with them about Beckett and Bertolt Brecht, and we were laughing and joking, and they start releasing tickets, and they suddenly turn to me and they say, you know what, you go ahead of us. You've traveled all the way from America to see this. We want to make sure you get in. And I thought that would never happen in America, that we, for whatever reason, we're frightened of each other, or we don't connect with each other, that those small kindnesses have just been sort of eliminated from our day-to-day living. And it is so wonderful to go to a place where people are gentle with each other. There's something wonderful about a place where art is infused into the culture. More people in England have been to theater than have been to sporting events, which is something completely different. And I think about what America would be like if we valued the arts more than our football or more than our baseball, if more people went down to their theaters instead of to their stadiums, if our cities gave more money to our theaters than our stadiums, how that would shift our culture. And I see what it's like there in the UK. I see how that has influenced the way they interact on just a personal daily level, and I like it. I like it a lot. I like that art is important.
Yeah. Well, who are some of your influences, either from when growing up or now or whatever? Who influences?
Gosh, let's see. I think as far as comedy, I was influenced growing up by Danny Kaye. I was influenced by Bob Hope. I was influenced by Carmen Miranda. I loved her. Then there was this children's show called Beekman's World, and I believed for the longest time that educational television could change our world, and that that investing in educational television could cause our youth to grow up better. Jim Henson was a huge influence to me, and his vision of kindness and gentleness, and in giving kids things that were weird, and allowing us to, our minds to expand, as opposed to just being spoon-fed commercials all day. And then growing up, more recently, there's an actress named Alana Ubach, who I just admire deeply. Rufus Sewell is this huge in the UK, but this British actor who I love. There's a lot of people who Julian Rein-Tutt. There's a lot of actors who people in America probably won't know, but their voices, as I'm writing. A lot of times I'll cast my books in my head, and I'll go, okay, so if I was going to cast this part, who would I cast in there? And there's certain actors, certain muses that I actually keep their pictures up on my wall and kind of go, okay, so this character sounds like that person, and this character sounds like that person, and those actors end up showing up in my books a lot.
And if people want to find out more about you, where can they go?
They can go to katedanley.com. I've got links to my books, links to my shows, links to my blog, my Flickr, my Instagram, my Twitter, my Facebook.
All the social. Well, Kate, thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Grant. This is awesome.
Kate Danley is a novel writer, a playwright, an actress, and more. Find out more about Kate, as well as check out her various projects at her website, www.katedanley.com. That's www.katedanley.com. Big thanks to Kate for being on the show today. 15 Minutes With on the GrantCast is a production of Saturday Morning Media and made possible in part by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to www.patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly donation for as little as $1 a month. Huge thanks to Shay Stewart, Merle Lafferty, Jeff Peterson, Dale Gadania, Stephen Staver, Jackie Klimo, Melissa Crawford, Chuck, Matthew Wayne Selznick, Dave Slusher, Mike Conflin, Dorothy Baciocco, John D., Kathy Crawford, Brian Greer, Carrie Whitney, Chuck Tomasi, Chris Foster, Stephen Ing, Clinton of ComedyForecast.com, Vicky DeVries, and Mike Wabshall. If you'd like to support the show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to www.patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. That's www.patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media, all one word. Or you can tell a friend about the show or leave the show a review on iTunes. Huge thanks to those folks who've gotten in touch saying that they like this 15 Minutes With series. I'm glad you do. It's continuing. If you have feedback, please feel free to reach out to grant@throwingtoasters.com. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back in 1 week's time. The GrantCast is copyright 2016 Saturday Morning Media. Grant Baciocco, executive producer. All rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com.